Yes, welcome to my session about Intune and Azure Virtual Desktop. And I'm happy to share some experience I made in the last years in the combination of Azure Virtual Desktop and Intune. First to me, my name is Marcel. I'm working in a consulting company today. I also built my own company where I created some features, or not features, tools around Azure Virtual Desktop. Early in the beginning, maybe some more now than that was started with AAD&AD and ended with a solution called Meurer, which is for managing Azure Virtual Desktop. And I'm also an MVP for Azure and also for Azure Virtual Desktop since last year. And what I like is to be here on stage, meet nice guys, and have a lot of conversation like yesterday, and hope that we can continue that today. So, to the agenda. As mentioned, I will talk about Intune in the combination with Azure Virtual Desktop. And to be honest, I'm not an Intune guy, so I'm not so deep in Intune, but I have some context where I work with customer and need Intune as a deployment for application. There are some limitations we will speak about and how we can go around and reach our targets, even with some limitations we will find or we will have in Intune in the combination with Azure Virtual Desktop. And we will talk and see how to capture images, how to deploy images, and what we have to keep in mind, even if we are using Azure Virtual Desktop in Entra or with Entra AAD-only. So, from my point of view, Intune, check what I can see, Intune works very well if I think about a notebook or an Azure Virtual Desktop personal desktop, which is mine, which usually runs Windows 11 Enterprise, then everything is, or nearly everything is working as expected. So that is good to use. We can also use it to manage our other endpoints like smartphones. But if we are talking about, and that is my focus today, Azure Virtual Desktop, mostly in the multi-user versions. That's also what I mostly see outside there. From a customer perspective, then we have some limitation, and that is not working well, not working as expected. And some of the challenges is the unpredictable of Intune. You never know when an installation starts, when a policy is applied. Luckily, that is faster than, I would say, a year ago. So that is the challenge. For example, what you cannot do, or what is not a good way, deploying Windows 11 multi-user in a host pool, and then wait for Intune to install the application. So that is not really working, or technically that can work, but practically users try to connect. Some hosts have application installed, the other not, or you have to wait for all hosts to be ready. So that is not what I would say customer can work with. On the other hand, what is also not working, and we will see that later, if you're doing updates, the user is running SAP, you cannot update SAP during the runtime. But mostly, that is what I think is a challenge. You never know when Intune starts, and if you take a look on the documented time, how Intune is refreshing the list of to-dos and starts installing application, that goes up to testing it every 8 hours. So it's faster in the beginning, and then the time increase before Intune will check if there's something new what you can do. So my approach is also to avoid that I cannot update or cannot install an application on a running host pool, or cannot update an application while users are sitting on top, or maybe while autoscaling from Microsoft would shut down the virtual machine during an installation of Intune. I'm using the Golden Master approach. And that is what I mostly see also at customer. It's really not so fancy because it's an old approach, but it's still working very well. And the approach works that we have a Golden Master. We install all the application, in this case with Intune, and that's what I see customers are using Intune for their notebooks. And so it makes absolutely sense to use these packages also for building our Azure Virtual Desktop environment while everything is patched.
So if you're using Intune to deploy to your golden image, are you enrolling that machine into Intune to get the access down?
Yes, exactly.
So what happens if you have stuff that Intune is deploying that you don't want for 100% of the people from the golden image?
We will see that. Then I will create I have to create a device group, and then only assign the application I want to have on my Golden Master. And where the Golden Master is part of this group or using this group. So to not get every application installed.
So you have many Golden Masters.
More than one, yes, more than one. Yeah. I also know that I can extend it with app attach. But that is not every time working.
What a segue. It was like on Prime, man.
Yeah.
Is that supported by Microsoft? Pretty sure Microsoft documentation.
Yeah. You have to redo it natively to convince and to make proof that that is not the problem if you have an issue. Like any other application where Microsoft is not giving support to. I would guess that if they have problems with SAP, it would not be a Microsoft problem. They would send me to SAP. So that is the approach I mostly make, having one Golden Master, and yes, I have mostly more than one, but I try to have not so much, and what I like to do to level it a bit more down is to maybe using FSLogix, the app rules.
Yes, masking, yeah.
App masking to hide some applications is also a nice option to lower it down. If the Golden Master is installed, I will capture an image, and that is what I then can use to deploy a session host. But there are some challenges which we'll figure out now. So that is how it looks from a graphical point of view. I have my Golden Master, I do the preparation, also the installation of the application, and if I go the Microsoft documented way, I would do a sysprep, and I also have to do some cleanups for Intune and Entra ID. Then I have the image, but the bad thing is if I do that in this way, run the sysprep, I can no longer use my Golden Master because it cannot longer start in Azure because this was sysprep. What I do, and we can do that with tools or with PowerShell, it's nearly seemingly the same. It's nearly the same. I have my Golden Master, I do the installation with Intune on top, with the packages still exist. Then I clone my virtual machine, so then I have a temporary one, and then I can do sysprep, can capture the image, and while I only did this on the clone, the sysprep, I can use my Golden Master in 2 weeks again, do application updates, Windows update, and go again through the process. And I never sysprep virtual machine again. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm pretty sure you will ask. Some pitfalls, and that changed also over the time. So my first approach or my testing was having only a Golden Master in Azure, bring it into Intune, install the application, and that didn't work. And I figured out that to have a Windows 11 multi-user in Intune, it must be part of a host pool. And later, that was no longer necessary. And I guess that is my last knowledge about that. But what I also do, or still do, is I have a kind of installation host pool where I have my Golden Master in, so that I can easily access this Golden Master for debugging reasons and to verify if the application I installed, and then I go through the process of capturing the image. That is one challenge which no longer exists, or which I handle with a kind of installation host pool. Another point is, if you do that multiple times, you will figure out, or you will have maybe the same name of your device, of your Golden Master and Entra ID. Then we have to remove this old name so that we can install a new Golden Master with a name exists before, but can no longer be, or should not be longer in Entra. That is one point. And to bring a Golden Master with Entra ID only in Intune, we have to roll out a machine extension that is with the name AAD login for Windows. There's also maybe 2 options with a specific parameter. Then we bring the virtual machine into Entra ID first, and the second step automatically into Intune, and then we can use device groups to assign application to them. Unfortunately, that is not what we can do in the Azure portal directly, but we can do it with a small script, also in the PowerShell and in the Azure portal, so that we don't need to authenticate. What we also have to keep in mind, we are preparing a Golden Master that the application should be installed on a machine level, so we need a kind of group device group where our Golden Master is member, and that is what we can use in Intune to design then the application. And then after a unspecific time, we will see that all the application gets installed on our Golden Master. And we have to do some cleanup before we are capturing the image or running the sysprep. We have to remove some things like registry settings, also some certificates, so that our clone or our image is clear and fresh, and that we can do an Enter ID join again with this image and also join it into Intune again. So if we get started, so what I basically do first, and one time, creating the installation host pool. I do that in the Azure portal. There are only a few things I have to keep in mind while I do that Enter ID-only, so not part of an Active Directory or a hybrid join. I have to configure some settings for the AAD Entra authentication so that I can log in. And I also will add my admin user in the virtual machine administrator login role so that I can log in with AAD to this virtual machine to do some debugging afterwards. Mostly virtual machine administrator login, that is what I forget, and then I'm wondering why it's not working, but then you will remember. Next step is also pretty easy. Create a desktop application group, give permission to your admin account to this desktop application group, and then also what I also mostly forget is link the desktop application group to a workspace so that it appears in the Windows app to connect to this virtual machine later. And optional, we can also configure the diagnostic settings. It's maybe not so important for the Golden Master, but I would recommend that for any host pool which you're using in production, because of the other session I have later, that is all about getting data from the diagnostic settings, even if something is not working as expected. Then we are at the point that we can roll out our Golden Master. I also do that, or can do that, in a different way. I decided here to do that in the Azure portal. So I go to virtual machine, create a virtual machine, and what we have to keep in mind is that we have to set the identity. In one of the steps you will see identity, the managed identity of the virtual machine, that must be switched on. Otherwise the virtual machine cannot join to Enter ID with its machine credentials. That is what we need, not with the user credentials. And afterwards the installation of the extension, and that is looks like that. So there are a few settings, and then we can apply the extension to the virtual machine so that it can appear in Entra and then Intune. Next step. Importantly, this part, that is the configuration for Intune with this nice GUID. And what we can also do, and we will do that later, we can use the Cloud Shell. Then we don't need to authenticate. Then we have an authenticated PowerShell to run this small script. And then if everything is working, we would see then the virtual machine in Intune and in Enter ID. And let us do that. So what I prepared is a virtual machine. I rolled it out yesterday and started today. So that is my new Golden Master, my T Intune-03. It's installed as a Windows multi-user operating system, but not yet joined into Entra. So that is what I want to do now with the Cloud Shell. And let me also check for Open Enter ID that we can see that this device is not there. Entra devices. This. And then we can switch for T-dash. So we have 01, but not 03 yet. Then I go to the virtual machine, open the Cloud Shell, and hopefully I have it in the clipboard. I'll show the script. That's the script I'm using. So that is what we have seen before. That is virtual machine name. And if I run this, that will take a few minutes. Then it should appear first in Enter ID and in the next step in Intune. Paste. So now it's running. And in the meantime, let me go to Intune, devices, Windows devices, T-dash. It's also not there. The dash 03 is an older one. I have to delete. And let me go to Entra. It's sometimes confusing that I'm switching between Entra and Intune, but there are two different objects. And let me refresh. Okay, luckily. So 03 is now an Entra joined device. It's not Intune managed yet, so that will take me another minute because the cloud is Azure. And then it also should show up Intune managed, and it should get applications. So go back to the PowerShell, not PowerShell, PowerPoint. So the next step is I installed only the extension. What also is needed to make from this virtual machine, or to make a session out of them, is to install the AAD agent and the AAD agent bootloader. Usually you can also do that completely directly, I will show it later, but to bring it also to my installation host pool, I have to go back to Azure. Let me go to the host pool. So I guess it's no longer needed. It was successful. So Virtual Desktop, host pool. There's my installation pool. It's not yet there, so therefore I can also bring it into the pool by copying the registration token. And that is what I need to make the connection between a virtual machine and a session host, which can also be sometimes confusing if you have a broken link. If a session host no longer exists but a virtual machine, or in the opposite direction, then you get different issues. So that is the virtual machine, AT-Intune-03. Here's my AAD agent installer. I'm clicking it.
Marcel, why are you doing this as a separate step when you can just deploy a VM with the agent pre-installed and it all works?
By bringing it into the host pool?
Well, you can just deploy a machine from the marketplace to host pool and all of this will be done for you, right? You don't need to manually.
Yeah, but I have to bring it into Intune at this point. And I can do it directly from the marketplace, but then I can show the insights about it.
Install it and get using it. So once it's in Intune,
Oh, that's interesting, yeah.
can Intune push the agent onto the
That would also be an option, but I have to bring the registration token into it or automate it to do that step. Or deploy it directly, then we can set up from this point. So that was this part. Then the agent bootloader. I also have customers doing the full process fully automated, and then they build up the golden master also from scratch and let the application install. And that there is a challenge, and we use nested application in Intune to have a last script, which is an identifier that the virtual machine is installed completely with Intune.
So I just join the host
Sorry?
the way I do it, I just join the host and try to get my scripts and I'll automate the first.
Okay, cool. I will show the more legacy for learning reasons. So let me see if we now have the host in the pool, which is not necessary, but makes it sometimes easier. Maybe it takes a minute or so. But let us check again Entra ID. It's Entra ID joined, not Intune yet. Refresh. Okay, it's now also in Microsoft Intune. And switching again to Microsoft Intune, that should also refresh. Okay, it's sometimes a bit delayed, but it will appear here in a minute, and you can still see it in the Enter ID view. Okay, believe me, it will happen. So, that's a demo. Sometimes it's important to debug. For example, if the virtual machine will not appear in Intune and will not show the Intune manage in Enter ID, then there are some reports to start with the event log where you can hopefully find some good information why that is not working. In the early days where it was needed that the golden master or the virtual machine must be in a host pool, there was a hint in the event log. And you can use the dsrec-cmd to get also the status of the virtual machine itself. Like mentioned before, we can do that differently. I also use wd-admin, that's also one-click deployment, like the Azure portal, to bring a virtual machine Enter ID join into a host pool with enabled Microsoft and with enabling the Intune join. And I will skip this. So what we also need, we need that the virtual machine is, or the device, which before not exist in Enter ID, it must be part of a group, and then we can use this group to assign application to it. What I did for my golden master, I can use a static group and add it manually. I created a dynamic group, which is nice, DYN, and as a rule, I use the naming schema. My virtual machines, golden master, starting with T- for template, and it will automatically goes into the group after the deployment, and then will get directly in the way Intune understand directly, get the application after a while. So then I will see in the best way, here we can see here's an application assignment to this member of this group, the device group, and then we will see the application later appearing on this virtual machine. So what I do to add application to Intune is by using the PowerShell app deployment toolkit. I would guess that is now. Maybe. It's a cool tool, PowerShell, free, built from a nice guy, that makes it easier to create application packages. You have comments to create a link in the start menu and something like all prepared. And that is what I'm also using to build my application. And the schema is mostly the same. You have a structure, a file structure, also including your application, executable or setup function. And after that, you use the Microsoft tool, Intune WinApp-util, to create from this folder structure a file which is called, and I marked it in my script, and it's no longer there. I guess that is a special format, Intune files. Intune files. That is what this package creates, and then you can go to Intune, create a new application, upload this special Intune Win file, and as a Win32 application, and then you can add it to your device group, and then it will install. So that is what I usually do. And what I also did to automate that a bit, that has a reason, because if you create an application in Intune, you must enter vendor name, application name, version, maybe language, so a lot of parameters. And on the other side, you mostly have done this with the PowerShell app deployment toolkit. There are also variables for vendor name, version, and so you're doing things twice. And I built a nice PowerShell script that is called convert ps1, and that is enumerating a folder structure in my environment, will automatically generate this Intune Win file if some modifications are detected, and then it will upload the package to Intune and will use the already set parameters like vendor name, version, to use this in the Intune configuration. That makes it a bit easier, and let me show how that works. So let me go to my can see it, or is it too small?
No, it's not too bad.
Too small, or is it?
No, it's okay.
Okay. Bring it into focus. Okay. So, Intune, company. So I have a package folder. Here are some of the applications in, and let me grab Country Switch, which is a free tool I built. Switch the language, and that is how this PowerShell app deployment toolkit structure looks like. Support files, the application or the toolkit itself, and the main thing is the deployed application PS1. And if I modify that, wanted Notepad++, but it wasn't shown. But then you can see that the structure is usually the same, and at a specific point there are some customization, like here. I enter the vendor name, app name, version name, and some other parameters. And also how to detect the application that is later needed by Intune to detect if the application is installed. And if I do some modification, maybe 192, and save it, then I have to build a new package, and I could use the Microsoft a tool to build the Intune Win file, or I could use the convert PS1, and that would detect now, in the best case, that I modified this application and then it should detect that I created a new version. It's now building this file with the Microsoft tool and hopefully uploading. And I guess I forgot to authenticate before, but we will see. And let us check if we can see the application in Intune. Intune. Apps. Windows apps. There should be a new application 1192, so I added the -2 at the end in the script, so that is now in the uploading process, and it should also get all the settings we have seen before, like publisher, version name, and so on, from the part of the PowerShell app deployment toolkit. So it was uploaded, and that is sometimes very helpful, though, that you don't have to re-enter all the things. The only thing I have to make is to add my application group to this application, so that the application I installed on my code master. So, okay. Other things we can do with Intune, I guess it is now, we can do some configuration. For example, we can, let me check the time. Okay. I have to do it faster. we can make configuration settings, and there are a lot prepared from Microsoft. And one thing I figured out, and that is a while ago, that some settings are not in Intune. And at this time that was FSLogix settings. Today they are in Intune and they are working. But at this time I had to import the AAD&AD files into Intune. And that is possible, and that works very well to this point. But after doing that and doing some configuration, I figured out that is not working. And after some research, I found out that the ADMX support that is working, but that the settings are made to Windows devices are not working for multi-user. So that is one point which seems to be working, but it's not working. Luckily for FSLogix that is solved, but if you have other settings where you have to import ADMX file, remember that that is not applied to multi-user Windows machines, like our AAD machines. But what is working is PowerShell. So 1 year ago or 1.5 years ago, I solved it by writing a PowerShell script doing the settings. More important, before you're capturing an image or running sysprep, you have to remove some parts inside of the virtual machine that is needed. Otherwise, we are not able to deploy the image as new virtual machine to hybrid installation, to Entra ID, and even not to Intune. Here, some parts are listed which needs to be removed. Certificates, some settings in the registration, and I'm doing that mostly with PowerShell, and that looks like this part. And I also have a link here on the bottoms. That is a link to a script which I use to capture image and to deploy virtual machine, and you can find the newest setting on how to clean up from Entra ID and from Intune also in the script, if you want to build your own automation for capturing. So what I do then is, in the process we have seen before, the golden master, the application are installed, then we are creating a clone, a temporary virtual machine, then we are applying or cleaning up with the script we have seen before, and then we can run sysprep, capture an image, and then deploy as many virtual machines as we want to do. And I will skip that because I think you believe it. Otherwise I can show it later. So what also is important, in AAD we have a life cycle. We sometimes or regularly replace our existing virtual machine with new virtual machine. And there are some things we have to keep in mind if we are doing that with Entra ID joint virtual machine. So if you have a virtual machine today in like AAD PRD 001 and we delete it, we can not deploy a new virtual machine with the same name until we clean up the Azure, the device in Entra ID. So what I did, and that is the one snapshot out of my tool, you can also do it automatically. There are two ways where you can, how you can handle this. You can run a script on the virtual machine you want to delete, so that the virtual machine itself can remove it, can remove itself from Entra ID, and then the virtual machine gets deleted. That is one way. And the second way is to use a service account or an account you have, then you can directly delete the device object in Entra ID. But it's important to have this in mind, otherwise you will run into an error and then showing you that you are not able to deploy a virtual machine with this name because the name exists in Entra ID. In this case, I'm doing that with the script, removing itself, and then the virtual machine gets deleted. So, I want to sum it up. I'll give you a summary. For Windows 11 Enterprise, like in Windows 365, in personal host pools, everything is working as expected. You only have to keep in mind how to shut down the virtual machine during the installation of an application. So that is the only point. For multi-user, not everything in Intune is working as expected. For example, the AAD&AD import and applying that is not working. Some policies are challenging, and mostly for the life cycle, I would recommend to use the golden master approach, install the application with Intune packages on the golden master, capture an image, and then deploy a very fast session host, and not doing it on vanilla host and then start deploying, because users try to log on, the application are maybe not installed completely, and also the update process. I would also do it using the golden image approach, because of the challenge that you not know when an application is updated. You have to take care that no user is running on top, and that autoscaling is not shutting down the virtual machine during the update process. We have to do some cleanups if we go for the golden master approach, so that we can capture an image, which will run again in Entra ID and Intune, and that we have to remove the device objects from Entra ID before we removing the virtual machine, so that we can deploy additional virtual machine with older names we had in the past again. And for that, I will share some links and also a QR code. I guess that is important for the app where we can do or win something. And with that, I would say thanks a lot. And if you have a question, I know that was fast. Please ask me. I'm here the full day and happy to answer you everything I can answer. Thanks a lot.